Hey, welcome to Flatirons Online. We're continuing this series called Anti-Hero, where we look at how God uses broken, messed up people to do unbelievable things in the world. If you have questions, you can connect with us at flatironschurch.com or on any of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Hope you enjoy.
$2,000 on thermometers, 2,000 surrounding us. Travel 2,000 kilometers to hang out with us. What's up, danger? What's up, danger? Hey, getting all they doubted us makes it that more marvelous. Sign them up cause ominous vibes and I get synonymous. What's up, danger? Hey, don't be a stranger, cause I like high chances and I'm my lows. I like it all on the edge just like you. Hey, I like tall buildings so I can leap off of them. I go hard with it no matter how dark it is.
I'm insane, but on my toes. I can keep the world balanced on my nose. I had a slumber party with all my foes. Now wear them like a badger on all my clothes. If I'm crazy, I'm on my own. If I'm waiting, it's on my throne. If I sound lazy, just ignore my tone, cause I'm always gonna answer when you call my phone. Like, what's up, danger?
Like, what's up, danger?
Don't be a stranger. What's up, danger?
I travel 200 miles, I'm knocking at your door. And I don't really care if you ain't done wrong. Come on, what's up, danger? Hey, don't be a stranger. I like it when trouble brews, I want their change. I like it when there's turbulence on my airplanes. I like it when I sense things that I can't see yet. Swimming with sharks when they ain't feed yet. Cause I like high chances that I might lose. I like it all on the edge just like you. Hey, I like tall buildings so I can leap off of them. I go hard with it no matter how dark it is.
I'm crazy on my own. If I'm waiting, it's on my throne. If I sound lazy, just ignore my tone, cause I'm always gonna answer when you call my phone. Like, what's up, danger?
Like, what's up, danger? Can't stop me now. Yeah. I said I got you now. Come on, what's up, danger? Come on, I said, what's up, danger? Good morning, Flatirons. So great to see you. Let's stand up together. We'll sing out. Here we go.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. And I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you.
Alright, come on, let's hear you.
You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day.
Sing now your mercy.
Now your mercy has saved my soul.
Now your freedom.
Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new. chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter. Come on, lift it up. Will you call me a citizen of heaven? When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Lift up a shout if you believe it.
How great the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. And the cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on
great to be in this room together this morning and declare that truth together, yeah? Hey, we're so glad you're here. Thanks for sharing your morning with us. Take a second, say hi to the people around you, welcome them here to Flatirons, then you can take your seats.
What's up, Flatirons? My name's Jesse. I work with our campuses and our campus pastors around here. So good to be together today. Just want to welcome everybody from all of our campuses. Want to welcome our friends at God Behind Bars at that campus in Lyman. I mean, that's just unbelievable. What's happening there? And then if you're watching online, just want to say welcome. We're wrapping up this series, the anti-hero series. I loved it. I love superheroes, heroes, anti-heroes, whatever it is. I would have worn a Marvel shirt up here, but my wife told me not to, and so I was like, okay, I won't. But here's the thing about this series. All the other speakers for it, they've taken all the good examples. And so I have no other example that I can use, so we've got to turn to the one place they haven't touched when it comes to heroes, and that's Disney, okay? So do we have anybody in the room, Disney fan, who's been to Disney World or Disneyland? Who's been to Disney World, Disneyland? Okay, you're representing. So we took our family a year ago to Disney World, and it was a new experience for me. We've got kids there, 10, 8, 6, and 4. It was just a new experience, because trying to stick to your parenting principles at Disney, I didn't know how hard it was gonna be, okay? I should have known, but you wake your kids up early to get them to the park, and then the park's crowded. It's really, really hot because it's Florida. There are crowds everywhere, lines everywhere. There's junk food everywhere. And so our experience at Disney really brought my parenting back to the basics. Bribes and empty threats. Okay, that's really all that I had. I mean, I was trying to be a good dad the whole time, and probably 5 times a day, I'm like, if you guys don't start behaving, we're gonna leave. We're gonna leave the park. And my kids just knew that wasn't gonna happen. But we took some pictures to commemorate our time at the most magical place on earth. This is the magical time we were getting our daughter Kate ready for the first time. This is a magical time that we told Ford he couldn't have his 5th churro. And this is the magical time I took Gray on his first roller coaster ever. So, Disney, the most magical place on earth. You know, if the magic trick is getting my kids to melt down 20 times a day, oh man. But Disney World is this place that's full of heroes. You got Aladdin, The Lion King, Moana, Snow White, all these heroes, and there are no anti-heroes at Disney. But at the same time, me taking my family to Disney World turns me into the anti-hero. That's what happens. And when we went to Disney World, my oldest two, Claire and Gray, they're 10 and 8 respectively, we took them on a couple roller coasters. They're finally into roller coasters, and it's awesome because we took them on some of the classics. But the second day, we went to Hollywood Studios, and we may have pushed them a little too far. We did a ride in... the name of the ride should have given it away. It's called the Tower of Terror. And so we probably shouldn't have done that, but our kids, we told them, hey, it's gonna drop us down. The kids are like, hey, it's totally fine. And so we get in, if you're unfamiliar with the Tower of Terror, they put the harness on you, and then you get in an elevator, and it raises you up 500 feet, and then it acts like the elevator's braking, and it drops you back down. And so we thought this would be a good idea to do with our kids who were 10 and 8, and so we took them up, and we get out to the ledge, and it just immediately it drops us, and my son Greg grabs my hand, and he goes, Dad, make it stop. And I remember having the dad moment going, buddy, it's too late for that. We're on this ride. There's not much I can do. And I just looked over at him. I was like, it'll be over soon. Turns out that was a lie. If you've never been on the Tower of Terror, what I didn't know is that it doesn't just drop you one time, but it drops you one time, and then it bounces you back up and down 3 or 4 times. And so the second time, Gray looks at me and goes, Dad, why are you doing this to me? And we get to the bottom, he's a mess, Claire's a mess. We have to leave the ride, we leave the park, we go back to the hotel, we're heading up to our room, and we all get on the elevator. Except for Gray. Gray's standing a few steps back. He goes, I think I better take the stairs. And that story right there, that illustrates for me why I love this series that we're in, because sometimes I need to know it's okay to not be a perfect parent. I mean, when it comes to parenting, I'm the furthest thing from a perfect parent. And when it comes to the other areas of my life, I'm far from perfect too. And I know that's like a silly story of a dad fail at Disney, but the truth is I could tell you other stories about dad fails in my life, and they wouldn't be funny, they'd be painful. They'd be embarrassing. They're the wish I could forget type of dad fail stories. I just didn't want to start off our Sunday with that, okay? I didn't want to start off our Sundays with those. That's why I've needed this series, because I've needed to hear that God doesn't need us to be perfect to work through us. Actually, here's the truth we've been looking at. In our weakest moments, God does his strongest work. When you and I are weak, God is strong. That's our foundation for the whole series. And each week we've been looking at a different person from the Bible and seeing how they aren't just a hero. They're not a hero, they're actually anti-heroes. They're regular people with regular struggles just like you and I. So we're wrapping up this series today, and we're gonna look at one part in the life of a person in the Bible who you've probably heard of. His name is King David. He's one of the ancient kings of Israel. And we're gonna actually look at this moment in David's life where he has this moment and he's asking himself the question, how did I end up here? How did we get here? The moment he realizes he's slowly turned into a person he doesn't even recognize anymore, and he doesn't know how he got there. And if we're being honest, that's something that you and I, we've been through too. You never thought that you'd be addicted. You never thought that you'd do that at work and you'd lose your job for that. You never thought that you'd be the parent that snaps at your kids all the time. And we look in the mirror in those quiet moments and we go, how did I end up here? But before we look at the moment that David's asking that question, here's a quick summary of who David is, in case you're new here or just as a refresher. So David started out, he was this shepherd boy. He was the youngest in his family, and God chooses him to be the king. And the Bible refers to David all throughout it as David is a man after God's own heart. David would actually spend his free time, he'd go out in the field and he'd write these songs and prayers to God. They're actually included in the book of Psalms in our Bibles. He was a warrior who established peace. He was a king that ruled his people fairly. The people actually look back on him as he was one of the perfect example of a king, what a king's supposed to be. But at the same time, in this story, David is about as imperfect as they come. It's in 2 Samuel chapter 11. He's probably about as famous for this story as he is for fighting the giant Goliath. In fact, even my 10-year-old daughter, Claire, knows this. The other night I was tucking her in, and she'll just bring up random things when I'm tucking her in for bed, and she goes, Dad, who's your favorite Bible person? And I was like, and I couldn't think of one, okay? I'm a pastor who can't think of his favorite Bible person, all right? And I just was like, I like all of them. And I think she bought it. I could have said Jesus, Jesus is obviously always the answer, but I was just like, I like all of them. I think she bought it. But then she goes, my favorite is David, because he was a man after God's own heart. Except for that one time. That one time he made a mistake, and it was a big mistake. And I remember thinking, what are they teaching our kids in kids ministry? Okay, I don't know what's going on over there. So here's the story of that mistake. It starts out with David sending his men out to war, and he stays behind. And this is different because David always would go out with his men to war, because David counted his life and their lives as just as valuable. So he would actually go and fight wars alongside of them, but this time he doesn't do that. He sends them out to fight his war, and he stays back. So David is checked out. He's bored. And I know you've heard this before, a bored man is a dangerous man. So it starts out in 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 2. It says, one evening David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. Now here's just some free advice for all the men in the room, okay? If you're in your backyard and you see a neighbor woman taking a shower in her backyard, here's what you should do. You go take a cold shower by yourself in your own house, okay? Don't do this. Don't go, I wonder who that is taking a shower. and I wonder why they're taking a shower in their backyard. I should go find out more. I should go investigate. Don't do that, okay? Just leave, just walk away. But look at what David does right here. Verse 3, it says, and David sent someone to find out about her. At this point, we know something about David. David has no game. Okay, David asks one of his friends, go get her number for me. Okay, you go get her number. I'm not gonna go, you go get her number for me. And the servant comes back and he says, her name's Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. Now this right there, that should stop him. She's a married woman. She's not available in the first place. But here's what's worse. Uriah was actually one of David's best friends. He was one of his most loyal warriors. He was actually a part of a group that was like David's secret service. His house was so close to the palace because when Uriah was there, he was supposed to protect David when David was in the palace. That's why the house was so close. And David has this decision to make. She's a married woman. She's actually married to one of my best friends. But at the same time, I'm the king, and I can do what I want. Verse 4, then David sent messengers to get her, and she came to him, and he slept with her. And then he sends her home. So David takes what's not his to take, and he thinks that a one-night stand is all that it is until Bathsheba gets him a message. Hey, I'm pregnant. And it's not Uriah's because he's out fighting your war. And now Bathsheba has what will be in 9 months living, breathing proof of David's sin. And so David schemes this plan to cover it up. He calls Uriah back from battle. And he asks Uriah how the war is going. Hey, tell me what's happening. Tell me what I need to know about the war. And then when they're done meeting, he says, Uriah, okay, well, why don't you just stay another day? And hey, since you're here, go home to your wife. What's her name again? Go home to your wife. I bet she misses you. I bet she's lonely. I don't know. Go home, spend some time with her. Put on a Marvin Gaye album, Netflix and chill, whatever you got to do. Make a baby. Who knows? Just go home to your wife. David tries to cover it up, but Uriah won't go home. Instead, Uriah says this. He goes, how could I go home to my wife when my soldiers can't go home to theirs? Notice how that's the exact opposite of how David behaved just a few verses earlier. The story continues in verse 12. It said, then David said to him, stay here one more day, and tomorrow I'll send you back. And so Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. And at David's invitation, he ate and he drank with him. And David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went to sleep on his mat amongst his master's servants. He did not go home. You see, Uriah has more integrity and loyalty when he's drunk than David has when he's sober. David's cover-up attempts aren't working. And if Uriah won't go along with the plan, then David's got to do something else. David's got to take care of Uriah. So verse 14, in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, that's the commander who's out in the field, and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest, and then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down and die. So Uriah carries his own death sentence to the front lines, to his commander. And when the fighting starts, Uriah's out there fighting for his king, and at his king's orders, all the other troops pull back. And Uriah's left to die on his own. David's commander, Joab, sends a messenger to David asking why David would give instructions to have one of his best, most loyal warriors killed. It just doesn't add up to the commander. And so David told the messenger, hey, say this to Joab. Don't let this upset you. The sword, it devours one as well as the other. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab. So David basically looks back at Joab and says, look, Joab, it's not that big of a deal, okay? War is war. Casualties happen. People die in war all the time. He's just another casualty of war. Don't worry about it. David doesn't tell the truth that it's all a cover-up. Instead, he just makes excuses. And David is now a heartless murderer. How did we get here? How does a man who was a man after God's own heart, he was a fair and a good king, he'd sit in the fields, he'd write all these songs about how good God was, he would fight alongside his men in battle. How does that man get to the point where he pulls a close friend's wife into bed, pulls that same man back from battle where the other men are counting on him, he gets him drunk and ultimately murders an innocent man, and he doesn't feel the least bit bad about it? How did we get here? And if we look back, we realize it's not just a lust issue. It's not just a jealousy issue. It's not just a lying issue. They're all symptoms of actually a deeper issue. And the deeper issue is the same issue for you and for me. If you look back at some of the worst choices that we've ever made, at the root of it, there's just one thing: entitlement. Entitlement says, I deserve this for my sake. That's how David got here. I'm the king. I deal with all the pressures of being king. I've worked hard to get us to where we're at. I deserve this. And then out of that sense of entitlement, he actually starts making excuses. That's another thing about entitlement. Entitlement leads to excuses. But we can't blame him because we do this too. The sex is non-existent in my house. Doesn't she know how hard I work? I provide for our family. I deal with all the stress at work. I deal with all the pressure, and I deserve some gratitude. And that's where it starts. And then a coworker starts to pay attention to you, and it feels like a breath of fresh air. Finally, somebody who tells you you're as important as you think that you are. Finally, somebody that notices how hard you work. And months later, you can look past the broken family, you can look past the broken marriage, you can look past the affair, and through it all, you will see the roots of entitlement. And it doesn't always have to blow up your life in dramatic ways. When we allow entitlement to creep into our lives, we end up thinking things, doing things, and saying things we never thought that we'd say. Say things like, I'm just so tired, I just deserve a break, okay? Why won't these kids just shut up and leave me alone? I'm following Jesus. I'm trying to do all the right things. I'm doing all the right things. So why does all this bad stuff keep happening to me? I don't deserve this. Or it might be this simple. I really want some new shoes. I know I can't afford them, but I've been working so hard and I'm so tired. I just deserve a treat. I just want a treat. But just play those examples out. What starts out with entitlement, it ends with broken relationships with kids, ends up with broken trust with God, or just being flat out broke. You see, when we're living out of a place of entitlement, even when things are blowing up because of our own choices, we'll make excuses and we'll blame other people. For a while, this will work for us, but it always catches up with us. At least that's what happened in David's story. Here's what happened next in verse 26. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. And after the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. And at this point, David thinks the cover-up's worked, that nobody else knows, the secret is safe. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. And in the next chapter, chapter 12, verse 1, it said, the Lord sent Nathan to David. So Nathan is a prophet. Just like Jonah was last week, if you were here last week, the prophets are God's mouthpieces for his people, and they always come on the scene when things are headed in the wrong direction. And David's about ready to get caught. It continues, when Nathan came to David, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb that he had bought. He raised it. It grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup. It even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. And let's just stop right there. Okay, that's a little weird, all right? But some people don't have boundaries with their pets. You guys have seen that before. Interesting thing about the context for this, the name of the certain town that this man was from, it literally translates Boulder County. I mean, it's just... And that's a joke, okay? If you can't get that, I'm sorry. Just go cuddle with your cats at home or something like that. All right, it's a joke. Verse 4, now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. And we can tell now that Nathan's setting David up, but David can't see it. He's just blind to it. And in verse 5, David burned with anger against the man. He said to Nathan, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity." In verse 7, then Nathan said to David, "You are the man." And David realizes this is not a story about sheep, it's a story about people. And that the person he's mad at, it's not another rich man, it's himself. And David is caught, and somebody knows what he's done. And now what is David gonna do? Is he gonna finally take ownership of it? Is he gonna admit that he messed up and accept the consequences? Or is he gonna keep on trying to manipulate the situation? Because again, he's king, and so he could have this prophet silenced. He could have this prophet taken somewhere else and killed. He could do whatever he wants here. Is he gonna take responsibility, or will he keep on making excuses? Verse 13, then David said to Nathan, "I've sinned against the Lord." Nathan says, "You are the man." David says, "I am the man. I did it." And David repents, and he admits that he's done something that he never thought that he would do, and he asks for forgiveness. And he actually writes this song about it. It's in Psalm 51, if you want to read it later. He asks for forgiveness, and God forgives him. But at the same time, David still has to deal with the consequences. He now has a wife who knows that her new husband killed her old one. He now has a commander that knows he can't trust his king anymore. And he still has the guilt knowing that he's got blood on his hands. There's so much more to that story. When we look at how he got here, it starts and it ends with entitlement. You see, David forgot something. David forgot that he wasn't entitled to the throne. He was entrusted with the throne. He wasn't entitled to the throne. He was entrusted with the throne. He started believing that all these people around him existed to serve his wishes and to do what he wanted. He started thinking that because he was the king, the rules didn't apply to him. But the thing about David is David didn't have a claim to the throne before God chose him. He didn't have a royal birthright. He didn't have any claim to the throne on his own, but God chose him. God chose him, not because of anything David had done, but he chose him because he knew that David would be a good, a fair, and a righteous king. David wasn't entitled to the throne. He was entrusted with it. And everything that we have in our lives, same thing applies. We're not entitled to what God's given us. We've been entrusted with it. He didn't give it to us because we deserve it. It's a gift from God. It's your wife, your husband, your job, your house, your income, your reputation, your talent. We're not entitled to it. We're entrusted with it. You might be saying, Jesse, here's the thing though, you don't understand. I worked hard. I sacrificed everything for my career. We saved and we saved and we saved for our house. I've worked hard for everything that I have. Before you get mad at me, just hear me out, okay? I'm not saying that you didn't work for it. I'm just saying that everybody in this room, everybody here has been a beneficiary at one time or another of forces completely outside of our control. I mean, you have zero influence on whether or not you were born in a place of opportunity. We have zero influence on whether the stock market goes up or it crashes. You have no influence in the fact that your wife was more interested in your personality than your looks, okay? Me too, thank God, all right? Thank God. While we might have worked hard to get to where we're at, we're also the beneficiaries of forces completely outside of our own control. And I personally believe that that's the grace of God. And here is the key difference between entitlement and ownership. Entitlement says, I deserve this for my sake. And ownership says, I'm a steward of this for their sake. That's what David didn't understand. And so what do we learn from this? How do we avoid ending up like David? I mean, imagine what David's life would have looked like if he would have had somebody like Nathan around him the entire time. Because here's the thing about entitlement. It's impossible to see entitlement in our own lives on our own. It's impossible. We actually have to rely on the people around us to point it out in us. And so here's the key to resisting entitlement and living in a place of ownership. Surround yourself with people who will say, you are the man. You're thinking, Jesse, that's great. I need more encouragement in my life, okay? Man, if just the people around me would just tell me I'm the man all the time, it would be so great. My life would be so much better. And you've realized that that's not where this is headed. You see, think back to David. He asked somebody to find out who the bathing woman was and then bring her to him. Guy looks at him and goes, you're the man. He tells somebody, hey, pour Uriah more wine, even though he's already had too much. I guess we're partying, David. You're the man. I want you to have Uriah sent out to the front lines and murdered. You're the king. You're the man. And it's not until Nathan steps out and says, David, you are the man. You become a person that even you don't recognize anymore. You see, entitlement grows deeper and deeper the more that people tell you you're the man, and the less you have people willing to say you are the man. So seek out the people willing to say you are the man, who will tell you when you're wrong, who will call you on your excuses, who will tell you the truth even when it's dangerous. One of my favorite scriptures speaks to that. It's in Proverbs 27:6. It says, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Real friends may say something that hurts, but you can trust that they do it because they care. But be careful if you only have people around you and all they do is kiss your ego. Be careful. Find people who will love you enough to risk offending you for your own good, that'll tell you the truth, even if it might hurt the relationship, who will risk what you think of them to help you see your blind spots. Find the people who will call you out when you're being entitled and who will call you on your excuses. Because here's the thing, I need people like that in my life. I need them in my life. I don't naturally step into a place of ownership. You see, on my own, I start to believe that I deserve everything that I want, and I make excuses when I don't get it. I don't step into a place of ownership on my own. I slide into entitlement, and I need people who are willing to risk the relationship, risk anger, risk anything like that, who will call me out and who will help me. So how do we put this into practice? I want to give you 3 questions to know if we're doing this. And if we're not, then these are 3 steps that we can take to actually start putting this into practice. And each step builds on each other. And it might seem simple, but at the same time, it's not easy. So here's the first question. Do you have someone in your life who loves you enough to offend you for your own good? Do you have someone in your life who loves you enough to offend you for your own good? Let me give you an example of this. When I was in high school, I was a student leader for our youth group. And I'll admit, there are way cooler things to do in high school than be a student leader for a youth group. But Jim was my youth pastor. And so one day, Jim and I were spending time together. He was meeting up with me, and he was just catching up, checking in, asking how life was. And I was a student leader, so I'm telling him, Jim, I'm reading my Bible all the time. Yeah, I'm at church all the time. Things with my girlfriend are going great. School's going great. I'm mentoring some younger students. And then Jim asks me the question. He goes, how are things going with your mom? And like a typical high school student, my relationship with my mom was pretty rocky at the time. What Jim didn't know is that earlier that month, I had written a free-form high school essay where I compared my mom to an infamous fascist dictator. Yeah. And you're like, how did they let you be a pastor? We have very low standards here at Flatirons. I mean, you guys know that. And I wish that I could forget about the story, but my mom actually has a copy of the essay still. So it's a weird keepsake. I don't understand it. But at this time in my life, my mom and my dad, they weren't getting through to me about my attitude. My friends wouldn't call me out on it. But Jim was willing. He was the only one who would step in and be that role in my life. He was the only one who would step in and ask me the hard questions and tell me the hard truth. I'm so grateful for it today. So my question for you is this: do you have someone in your life who's willing to risk offending you to tell you the truth? If you don't have someone in your life who will tell you the truth, then don't pay any attention to the following questions, okay? That's step 1. So right now, think through your friendships. Does one of those people have the potential to be your Nathan? Set up a time this week to connect with them, to have a conversation. Or maybe you're like, Jesse, I can't think of anybody. I literally cannot think of one of my friends who could be that person. Well, I'm telling you, we're getting ready to do group signups in just a few weeks. You can get around a circle, you can get around a table with people who will love you enough to ask you the hard questions and who will tell you the hard truth. So that's question one. Question two is this: have you let that person into your mess? Ben talked about this a couple weeks ago. Do you have a person who knows the real you, mess and all, or do all of your friends just know your mask? I think that Ben said it so well. God will bless your mess, but not your mask. And that's true for other people as well. So will other people. So have we actually let them in? Have you let that person into your mess? So step one, get somebody in your life who will risk offending you for your own good. And step two, let that person into your mess so that they can speak into it. And then the final question, question three, do they know that you're counting on them? You see, they need to understand how important it is that they see your mess and they speak into it. These people in your life, they need you to tell them that you'll never be the person that you want to be, the person God created you to be, unless they come alongside you, and they won't settle for your excuses, but they'll continually call you forward into who God created you to be. So take time today to help that person understand, hey, I need you to be this person in my life. I need you to help me ruthlessly identify and root out entitlement and excuses out of my life. If you don't do anything today, send those texts, make those calls, set reminders for yourself to do that today. Because David, he didn't have these people until it was too late. He didn't have them until it was too late. But here, it might be the most encouraging thing, the thing that you needed to hear more than anything today. David's mistakes didn't prevent him from being called a man after God's own heart. The Bible doesn't look at David and say he was a man after God's own heart, then he made the mistake, and then he wasn't after that. It literally looks at the scope of David's whole life and says he was a man after God's own heart. Because David was willing to admit where he was wrong. He was willing to repent. He was willing to ask for forgiveness, and then God forgave him. David is referred to all throughout the Bible as a man after God's own heart. And that's not because of David's faithfulness, it's because of God's faithfulness. My friend Dean, he went to Italy recently. When he and his wife were in Florence, they saw the statue of David by Michelangelo. It's actually inspired by the story of David. And the guide told him that the David was carved out of a block of marble that nobody wanted. It was considered too brittle to make anything significant out of. That's until Michelangelo took the stone that nobody wanted, he worked on it for 3 years, and out of it he created a masterpiece. And I think that's a good metaphor for David's life too. Too brittle, imperfect, slightly damaged, has flaws. But with a master sculptor, it could become something beautiful. That might be a good metaphor for us too. On our own, we're brittle blocks of stone, not really worth anything on their own. But when we get in the hands of a master sculptor, when we allow him to do the difficult, the time-consuming, the painful chiseling process, we can become the people that he saw in us all along. God never expects us to be perfect on our own, and he chooses to work with us anyway. We can be anti-heroes because God doesn't need any other heroes. He already sent one. And that's Jesus. It doesn't mean that we're not trying, but it means that our effort doesn't earn his affection. We already have it just like we are. See, we are the broken, the messy, the imperfect people that God will love and will use in this world. And to help us remember that, we're going to take communion here in a few minutes. You see, God knew something about us. He knew that there were going to be times that we forgot about the cross, we forget about the sacrifice Jesus made for us, or we forget about just how important it was. We'll think that we have to do things to deserve his love. And he says, hey, you don't have to deserve my love because I already sent someone to die in your place. He didn't deserve it, and he died in your place. He says, so I want you to take bread and I want you to take juice. And the bread represents Christ's body, which was broken for you. And the juice represents his blood that was poured out for you. You don't have to be better to deserve my love because Jesus stepped in your place. So I give it to you freely. And as the ushers, as they pass the bread and the juice, We're gonna do this differently today. Just hold on to the bread and hold on to the juice and listen to the song that the band has. It's this song, and one of the lines in it says, God bless this mess if this is as good as it's gonna get. God, I'm trying to clean myself up. God, I'm trying to fix the broken parts of me, but God, if I can't do any better than what I've done so far, God, is this still okay? Will you still work with this? And hold the bread and hold the juice if you're a follower of Jesus to know he looks back and he says, because of Jesus, yeah, I can work with that. Yeah, you're okay. I'll take you just like that. And so as they hand out the bread and the juice, just hold on to them. Reflect on what you're holding. Reflect on the song that the band sings. And then we'll come up and we'll all take communion together after that. Let's pray. God, I need those reminders. God, we need those reminders. God, we need the reminders that we don't have to be perfect, God, because Jesus was perfect for us. We don't have to deserve your love because you sent Jesus who didn't deserve to die on our behalf. And he died for us. God, we're grateful that you would love us so much that you'd send Jesus for us. God, together we're imperfect. God, we might be a mess. But at the same time, you sent Jesus so that we knew in the middle of our mess we were still loved. So God, we remember the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross. As we reflect on communion, thank you for the cross. Thank you for Jesus. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.
Here's to the brokens, the misfits and wannabes, the part of you that's just like me, the wallflowers and the holy of the miles, to the diamonds that are never gonna leave the rough, the rolling stones that are always stuck, the all-nighters and the lost I've never found. This mess, if this is as good as it's gonna get, I'm gonna hold you like I know it's gonna be okay. Again, I got a hurricane in my heart, keeps on rattling the good apart. And honestly, I'm just an honest wreck, but I'm trying my best. Oh, God bless this mess. Oh, God bless this mess. Here's to the waiting, all the waiting that we have to do, the dreams we make that never come true, and all the hurting that comes without a warning. Here's to the view from the tile of the bathroom floor. Been there before, and the hell-bent sun that's gonna come up the next morning. God bless this mess, if this is as good as it's gonna get. I'm gonna hold you like I know it's gonna be okay. Again, I got a hurricane in my heart, keeps on rattling the good apart. Just an honest wreck, but I'm trying my best. Oh, God bless this mess. Oh, God bless this mess. Most of the time, I forget to pray. When I close my eyes, I just say, this is as good as it's gonna get. God bless this mess, if this is as good as it's gonna get. And I'm gonna hold you like I know it's gonna be okay. Again, now I got a hurricane in my heart, keeps on rattling the good apart. And honestly, I'm just an honest wreck, but I'm trying my
So stand with me. I don't know how you walked in here today. I don't know the brokenness that's in your past. I don't know the pain that you carry, the wounds that you have. You might walk in here and say, I'm a mess. Look around. What you're not going to find is people staring at you saying, yeah, you are a mess. You're going to find people who are going to look at you and say, yeah, me too, us too. We're a mess too. We are the anti-heroes. We're not heroes, we're the anti-heroes. We are the broken, the messy, the imperfect people that God will love and will use in this world. And I'm telling you, Flatirons, he's using you. He's using you to change communities in rural Africa. He's using you to change the lives of the most vulnerable in Afghanistan. He's using you to change prisons. He's using you to change schools. He's using you to change the lives of single moms and their kids. He's using us. We might be a mess, but we're his mess. And he uses us not because of anything that we've done, but it's all because of what Jesus has done, where he left everything that he was entitled to, and he came down to die on our behalf. And so we believe that. In Romans it says this, at just the right time, while we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. God demonstrates his own love for us in this, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And so who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. And so I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus, our Lord. And to remember that, we take the bread that signifies his body that was broken for us, and we eat it. And we drink the juice to remember that he was willing to give his blood up for us. And we worship and we celebrate the God who was willing to leave everything he was entitled to and die on our behalf. Let's worship together.
With all of creation, declaring the works of your hands. My voice, it is straining, yes, my heart is longing to join in the song of the Lamb. You make all things new. I'm running towards you, I'm walking beside you. Your presence is always with me. Though darkness surrounds me, your glory is shining. I was blind, but now I can see. You make all things new. Jesus, the King of my salvation, you are my end and my beginning. Your plans are good, your promises are true. You make all things new. Though burdens and broken, the words you have spoken will comfort and carry me home. Creation is groaning, but your voice is growing so loud now my heart beats with hope. Oh, you make all things new. Yeah. Jesus, the King of my salvation, you are my end and my beginning. Your plans are good, your promises are true. Oh, you make all things new. Jesus, the King scene, took the nails to rescue me. Your voice that called for the sun's first light on the cross gave love's victory shout. The stone was rolled.